Have you ever felt um, like this crushing weight of just living a perfectly logical life?
Oh, the perfectly logical life.
Right. You probably know the exact sensation I'm talking about. It's like you follow the precise blueprint that was laid out for you from birth.
The one everyone agrees on.
Exactly. Your
Yeah.
parents draft the initial plans, right?
Yeah.
And then your teachers sort of refine the schematics, society rubber stamps the whole project, and you build the house exactly to code.
You check all the boxes.
Yeah, you get the approved degree, you take the secure job, you make the sensible, diversified investments.
Yeah.
And then,
You wake up one day.
yes, you wake up on like a random Tuesday morning, you look around at this flawlessly constructed, highly logical life, and you feel completely, utterly hollow.
It's a terrifying realization.
It really is. It's this incredibly isolating, suffocating feeling because on paper, you've done everything flawlessly. The math adds up.
Right, the spreadsheet is green.
The spreadsheet is green.
Yeah.
But in the center of your chest, the engine is just completely stalling out.
We are looking at a really profound existential dissonance there. Because you have this mountain of external validation, screaming at you that you've succeeded.
You won the game.
Right, that you won the game of life. But your internal metric, the actual felt experience of being you, is basically flashing a bright red catastrophic warning light.
Which society tells us to ignore.
Completely. Society conditions us from a very early age to prioritize the external, the measurable, the logical. We demand things that can be categorized and graded.
And insured.
Exactly. We build entire economic and educational systems around avoiding risk and just maximizing predictable outcomes.
Because we want a clean binary.
Yeah.
Right? Like broken or functional, safe or dangerous. The logical box gives us that illusion of control. You follow the rules, you get the reward.
But the problem with that binary system is that it completely collapses the moment you step into the world of internal human fulfillment.
It just doesn't apply.
No, because fulfillment doesn't operate on a spreadsheet. We're dealing with a navigational landscape that is murky and unpredictable and highly individualized.
Right.
A blueprint that built a mansion for your neighbor might literally build a prison for you.
I think that is the absolute definition of navigational muddy waters right there. And that's really why today's deep dive is designed to completely dismantle that traditional, sanitized pros and cons approach to the massive life choices you face.
It's time to throw the list away.
Exactly.
Okay.
The mission today is to explore a fascinating, highly unorthodox perspective on decision-making, personal evolution, and really the raw mechanics of intuition.
What actually happens when you rely on a completely different compass?
Right. We're going to look at what happens mechanically and psychologically when you throw that logical blueprint entirely out the window. So to unpack this, we are drawing from a very specific and unique source.
Yes, we are.
We're diving into a YouTube video transcript. It's simply titled, "The Importance of Following Your Heart in Your Decision-Making Process."
It's a great title. Straight to the point.
Very straight to the point. And the creator is a practitioner named Osman, who runs a channel called The Blind Muslim Yogi. And just to give you the necessary context directly from his material, Osman's background is pretty extensive.
Yeah, he's definitely not just a casual observer.
Not at all. He describes himself as a master-level energy healer, specifically focusing on terminal illnesses and critical care recovery, alongside being an advanced-level yoga and meditation teacher.
And we really need to place a crucial, non-negotiable piece of context right here at the start of the deep dive.
Yes, please.
Osman is extremely explicit in his content regarding medical disclaimers.
Right.
He actively and repeatedly advises his audience to consult with a qualified, licensed medical practitioner in their locality for any physical or mental medical condition.
He's very clear about that boundary.
Very clear. He draws a hard line, stating that his therapies are natural-based interventions and are absolutely not a replacement for traditional licensed medical treatment.
Yeah, and for anyone looking to explore his specific natural therapies later, his website is yoganis786.com. But today, we're zooming out. We aren't just looking at the energy healing aspect.
We're looking at the whole picture.
Exactly. We're analyzing his entire foundational philosophy on how to navigate human existence. Because Osman isn't offering up that, saccharine, cliche greeting card advice to simply follow your dreams.
No, it's a much heavier argument than that.
Yeah, it is. He frames intuition, like an actual act of following your heart, as a non-negotiable biological and spiritual necessity for human evolution.
And that's the core tension right there.
Right, because he argues that there are severe, destructive, real-world consequences if you permanently suppress it.
Modern culture really treats following the heart as this indulgent luxury, right? Like it's viewed as something you do on a 2-week vacation.
Or a privilege reserved for, like, independently wealthy artists.
Exactly. But Osman flips that hierarchy completely. He argues that intrinsic desire is the primary mandatory mechanism for human growth. And logic. Logic is merely a secondary tool.
It's meant to serve that growth, not restrict it.
Precisely.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want to look at the timeline he sets for this. He is very specific about when this shift has to happen.
The shift from logic to intuition.
Yeah. Osman argues that the moment a person reaches adulthood, and he defines this generally as 18 and over, though obviously different cultures have different legal thresholds, but once you hit that, a fundamental transfer of authority must occur.
It has to shift inward.
Right. Once you cross that threshold into adult autonomy, you absolutely must start making your own decisions based entirely on what you feel in your heart.
Which is hard.
It's incredibly hard. And the kicker is, he says you have to execute this despite the heavy, often well-intentioned influence of your elders, your professors, or authoritative figures.
Think about how radical the departure that is from traditional societal structures.
It's basically structural rebellion.
It is, because for the vast majority of human history, the wisdom of the elders was the ultimate survival mechanism.
You listened to them so you didn't die.
Exactly. You deferred to the professor or the parent because they possessed the accumulated data of surviving in a dangerous world. And Osman isn't dismissing their data.
Right, he doesn't say they're stupid.
No, he acknowledges that these authoritative figures possess knowledge, and he notes they will likely try to control you or offer very strong suggestions based on that knowledge. But he establishes a hard perimeter.
The bottom line.
The ultimate final bottom line is executing what you feel in your heart to be correct for your specific life path.
And I'm looking at the consequences of ignoring that perimeter. Osman points to a societal phenomenon that, honestly, I guarantee is going to hit close to home for a lot of people listening.
Oh, without a doubt.
He observes individuals reaching their 30s and 40s, right? They're looking around at their lives, and they're desperately asking, why is life so miserable?
Why is everything so relentlessly difficult?
Exactly. Why am I fundamentally unhappy? And we typically label that, what, the midlife crisis?
Yeah, the classic midlife crisis. And the mainstream psychological diagnosis for that usually centers on a mourning of lost youth, or maybe a sudden awareness of mortality.
Hormones.
Right, a localized hormonal shift. But Osman diagnoses the root cause entirely differently.
Which is fascinating.
He attributes this specific, suffocating misery directly to the prolonged exposure of living life in a box.
A logical box.
It is the accumulated compound interest toll of following general societal rules and logical patterns instead of your own highly specific internal compass.
He illustrates this with a really specific, almost comical example in the text.
Oh, the hippie example.
Yes. He talks about an individual who, deep in their core, has a burning desire to become a hippie. But they suppress that urge entirely.
Because of logic.
Right. They have this internal monologue where they say, no, I can't become a hippie. I need to take this corporate job or study this specific degree because my parents insist it's good for me.
And objectively, it makes logical sense.
Exactly. They allow an external data point to completely assassinate an intrinsic human desire.
And the mechanics of motivation are really vital to understanding why that assassination is so disruptive.
How so?
Well, in behavioral psychology, we differentiate between external and intrinsic motivation.
Okay.
External motivation relies on outside forces, like doing something to secure a financial reward, to gain societal prestige, or just to avoid the punishment of disappointing your parents.
Which is huge for a lot of people.
Absolutely. But intrinsic motivation is executing an action because the act itself is inherently fulfilling to your unique psychological makeup.
You do it just to do it.
Right. And Osman is warning us that when you let logical sense permanently override your intrinsic desires, you are essentially starving your psychological immune system.
Man, I was trying to conceptualize how this mechanism actually functions in daily life. I came up with an analogy.
Let's hear it.
Imagine you have a GPS system in your car, but it was permanently programmed by your parents 5 years ago.
Well, that's good.
The hardware of the GPS is functioning
Right.
perfectly, right? It calculates the safest, most well-paved roads. It dynamically routes you around all the traffic jams and hazards.
So it's a good system.
It's a flawless system. It successfully delivers you to a destination without a single scratch on the vehicle. But it has driven you to a city you never actually wanted to visit.
Wow.
You are completely safe, you followed all the logical traffic laws, and you are utterly miserable because you are standing in the wrong house.
That is a phenomenal way to isolate the problem. You are perfectly secure, but you are entirely lost.
Exactly.
And what's fascinating here is that Osman doesn't sell a fantasy. He doesn't pretend that if you take back control and program your own GPS, the road is going to be smooth.
No, he says the opposite, actually.
Right. He openly, explicitly admits that following your heart is going to lead you directly into mistakes.
Yeah.
He actually asks his audience rhetorically, does this mean that you're going to always feel that which is right? No, you're going to make a lot of mistakes.
Which is scary. But he completely redefines the concept of a mistake.
He does.
He argues that these aren't just random errors. They are highly specific mistakes that you explicitly needed to make on your own. It's like a localized lesson required for your specific development.
The mistake is transformed from a failure of the system into a necessary feature of the learning algorithm.
Right.
Because when you remain trapped in the logical box, you might successfully avoid the mistake, but you simultaneously amputate the lesson.
You stay static.
Exactly. You remain fundamentally static. But by walking into the mistake, driven by an intrinsic desire, you map the actual contours of your own psychological and spiritual boundaries.
You learn your own limits.
Yes, you learn your own load-bearing capacity rather than relying on a structural report written by someone else.
I love that. But I'm looking at this theory and trying to figure out the deeper why behind it. Like, if following our heart is statistically guaranteed to lead us into messy, painful, erroneous situations,
It is.
right? Then why is it so relentlessly vital? Why not just stay in the safe, logical box and avoid the pain altogether?
That's the million-dollar question.
And Osman moves past simple psychology here and dives into a deeply philosophical explanation rooted in his lifelong background in yoga sciences.
Yeah, the framework fundamentally shifts here from basic behavioral psychology to something approaching a biological and spiritual mandate.
A mandate to do what?
Well, from Osman's perspective, the primary overriding purpose of human existence is to evolve.
Okay.
We are not here to merely maintain homeostasis. We are here to undergo a dynamic process of personal evolution.
And he describes the physical sensation of this evolutionary drive so vividly.
He really does.
He says, we possess inherent desires and wishes that are so deeply embedded, they will literally pull and gnaw at you.
Gnawing. That word is so visceral.
It is. It implies something that is slowly consuming you from the inside out. And he states that until these specific desires are satisfied, you're fundamentally incapable of feeling okay.
And, society often pathologizes that gnawing feeling.
Oh, completely. We're told it's anxiety.
Right. We are frequently instructed to suppress our disruptive desires, to medicate them, to meditate them away, or to view them as immature distractions from our quote-unquote real adult responsibilities.
Like back to the spreadsheet.
Exactly. But Osman flips the script. He asserts that these persistent gnawing desires aren't distractions from your work. They are the work.
They're the engine.
Yes,
Yeah.
they are the primary engine of your evolutionary progress.
I have to admit, his theory on where these unexplainable desires originate completely short-circuited my brain for a minute.
It's wild.
It is, because he points out a universal human experience. Suddenly possessing a massive, overwhelming desire to do something and having absolutely no logical explanation for why it's there.
Like out of nowhere.
Right. No one taught it to you in school. You didn't absorb it from a targeted social media ad. It is just spontaneously present.
And his explanation for that is fascinating.
He theorizes that this could be an evolutionary memory or a genetic memory that is literally physically embedded within your system.
Let's just sit with the sheer weight of that implication for a moment.
It's heavy.
If we stop viewing a sudden, inexplicable life urge as a random, potentially destructive whim, and instead view it as a biological or spiritual directive passed down through our very genetics,
It changes everything.
the entire paradigm of how we make choices changes. It suggests that the sudden, terrifying urge to abandon a corporate career, or to move across the globe, or to learn an entirely obscure skill isn't a fleeting fancy.
It's a command.
It could be an inherited imperative. Your specific lineage, your specific genetic code requires you to execute that action to take the next necessary evolutionary step.
I want you, the listener, to pause whatever you are doing right now and run an audit on your own life.
Highly recommended.
Think about a persistent, totally unexplainable pull you felt for years. Something that completely defies the spreadsheet.
Something that makes zero logical sense.
Right, something your parents or your most logical friends would actively roll their eyes at. but it absolutely will not leave you alone.
Mm.
What if that gnawing anxiety in your chest isn't a malfunction?
What if it's a memory?
What if it is a literal genetic memory, violently demanding to be fulfilled so that you can break out of stasis and actually evolve?
And Osman is unequivocal about the cost of ignoring that demand. He states that from the viewpoint of yoga sciences, if you refuse to satisfy these deep-seated things that reside in your heart, you will forcibly halt your evolution as a person.
You just freeze.
You sever the forward momentum, you effectively freeze yourself in developmental time, doomed to repeat the same cognitive loops for the rest of your life.
See, I am struggling with the practical application of this, though. I have to push back on this premise just a bit.
Go for it.
If we accept that we absolutely must satisfy our deepest desires to trigger evolution, and that these desires are akin to genetic commands, doesn't that just legitimize total chaos?
Ah, the chaos argument.
Yeah. Like if my genetic memory tells me to quit my job, abandon my responsibilities, and move to Las Vegas to gamble my life savings, isn't that just a recipe for catastrophic self-destruction under the guise of spiritual growth?
That is the necessary and most critical counter-argument to his philosophy. Unbridled, contextual free desire is the definition of chaos.
It's just dangerous.
A philosophy that advocates for blindly following every impulse is just hedonistic nihilism. But Osman anticipates this exact friction, and he addresses it head-on.
He does.
He is fully aware that his stance on following the heart is controversial, but he absolutely does not advocate for anarchy.
He draws a very thick, unmistakable line. He explicitly warns his audience against throwing caution to the wind.
Which is a relief.
Seriously.
Yeah.
He states that your evolution cannot come at the cost of long-term detrimental or life-threatening harm to yourself or society.
He is building a framework for brave living, not a manual for reckless dying. The mechanics of his philosophy require the organism to survive the lesson.
Exactly. And he provides a concrete list of extreme dangers in the transcript that must be avoided.
Very specific warnings.
He specifically calls out the catastrophic dangers of highly addictive drugs, destructive habit patterns, and promiscuity. And he explicitly notes the grave risk of contracting severe diseases like AIDS.
Right.
He also strongly warns against associating with or joining groups of people involved in criminal activities that generate harm.
And what reveals the depth of his framework here is how he instructs us to handle advice regarding these specific dangers.
Right, because earlier he said to ignore advice.
Exactly. In the first section, he told us to essentially ignore the authoritative figures trying to force us into this safe, logical box. But in this context, he introduces a crucial caveat.
A major caveat.
He advises that if you are drawn toward a highly risky situation and someone is telling you no while your heart is screaming yes, you cannot just blindly dismiss their warning as logical suppression.
That nuance is everything.
It is.
He instructs that you have an obligation to spend serious time investigating why they are issuing that warning.
You have to do the work.
You are required to perform rigorous research using all the available information before making a life-altering decision. You don't just blindly follow the gnawing feeling off the edge of a cliff.
No, you are required to use your intellect to survey the structural integrity of the cliff first.
I like that.
It is a delicate, necessary symbiosis. The heart is the engine that sets the destination, but the logical mind is still required to pack the parachute and check the weather conditions.
Beautifully put.
He practically demands that if you are going to enter a situation carrying a known level of danger, you must do so with your eyes wide open.
And you need an exit strategy.
More importantly, yes, you must structurally ensure that you have a viable exit strategy. You need to possess the certainty that you can extract yourself from the situation if the lesson turns lethal.
And that concept of the exit strategy really leads to his ultimate warning, which is getting involved with substances or situations where an exit strategy becomes biologically or psychologically impossible.
Where you can't get out.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting. This is where his specific mathematical philosophy completely fascinated me.
Oh, the 50-50 thing.
Yeah. When Osman discusses the severe dangers of drugs and alcohol, he presents a highly unconventional method for calculating risk.
His mathematical breakdown really defies standard statistical logic,
Yes.
yet it makes absolute terrifying psychological sense when you examine the mechanics of human choice.
So he readily admits that statistically drugs have destroyed many lives, but perhaps it isn't the absolute majority of all people who have ever tried them.
Sure.
He acknowledges that the individuals whose lives are completely irreparably destroyed might represent only a fraction of a percentage of the total population.
Which logically sounds safe.
Right. If you look at a traditional risk assessment chart, the statistical odds of total annihilation might appear relatively low. But Osman argues that to the solitary individual standing at the crossroads, actively making the choice to ingest a highly addictive substance, it's always fundamentally a 50-50 chance.
The mechanics of how he reframes this are brilliant. He is forcefully removing the false psychological comfort of the macro statistic and forcing the individual to confront the micro-reality of the consequence.
It's not 1% to you.
Exactly. From a sociological bird's-eye view, perhaps only 1% are totally destroyed. But the human brain is terrible at processing micro-probabilities when the consequence is infinite.
Yes.
When you, the individual organism, take the substance, you do not possess the ability to be 1% destroyed.
You can't just ruin 1% of your life.
No. You either fall entirely into the category of the destroyed or you fall entirely into the category of the safe. It is a binary outcome for the user, 1 or 0.
He phrases it so clearly in the text. He says, who knows whether you are belonging to that fraction of a percentage or to the majority? It's a 50-50 chance that you belong to the fraction or to the majority.
It's functionally a coin toss.
For the person living the experience, absolutely. Either your entire life trajectory is ruined or it isn't.
And Osman isn't offering a lesson in actuarial science or statistical odds. He is outlining existential odds.
Right.
And the existential odds of introducing highly addictive substances into your system are catastrophically high because they hijack the very mechanism you are trying to utilize.
That's the scariest part.
An addiction does not gnaw at you for the sake of your personal evolution. It gnaws at you strictly for the sake of its own consumption.
Wow.
It overwrites your intrinsic desires with a synthetic craving, entirely removing your cognitive ability to execute an exit strategy.
It literally replaces the evolutionary pull with a parasitic one. I look at this vast theoretical framework like the absolute necessity of the gnawing heart, balanced against the terrifying 50-50 existential coin tosses of life. And I have to ask how this functions in the real messy world.
In practice.
Yeah, because it is incredibly easy for us to sit in a studio and discuss abandoning the logical blocks in the abstract.
Oh, it's very easy to talk about.
Right. It is a completely different universe
Yeah.
to actually execute that abandonment when your livelihood, your reputation, and your entire future are on the line.
Absolutely.
But Osman doesn't just preach this. He shares a deeply personal, high-stakes anecdote about applying this exact philosophy to his own life.
It is an absolute textbook study in the agonizing psychology of walking away from a monumental sunk cost.
He details his time enrolled in medical university. He was firmly on the heavily validated path to becoming a doctor.
The ultimate logical box.
The platinum-plated one. In almost every culture on Earth, this is the goal. But when he made the sudden internal decision to leave that path, his colleagues looked at his actions and explicitly labeled it the most stupid decision a person could make.
And you can see why they'd say that.
Of course, because he was holding a guaranteed, highly lucrative career in his hands. It represented a bulletproof guarantee of financial independence, societal respect, and lifelong security.
Try to conceptualize the sheer crushing social and internal pressure of that moment. Medical school is notoriously difficult to gain entry to.
It takes years.
Years. It requires an exorbitant financial investment and it demands a massive restructuring of your personal identity. To walk away from that level of investment isn't just a matter of changing your major.
No.
It is the active assassination of an entire future identity that society has universally deemed perfect. The cognitive dissonance required to execute that decision is staggering.
But Osman states that deep within his heart, the gnawing feeling was overwhelmingly present.
It wouldn't let him go.
He felt a profound internal certainty that this medical path wasn't the only conceivable way he could generate income. And more crucially, he hit a philosophical wall.
Which was?
He realized that acquiring ultimate financial independence and vast sums of money was utterly pointless if he was fundamentally unhappy in his heart while performing the daily labor.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the foundational architecture we established earlier, this moment is the ultimate stress test of his entire philosophy.
Right.
It is an open war between external validation, the immense prestige of the medical degree, the guaranteed high income bracket, and intrinsic motivation.
The genetic memory.
Exactly. The relentless gnawing genetic memory insisting that his true evolutionary path lay elsewhere.
And what elevates this story from a simple motivational fable to something deeply human and relatable is that he didn't just walk away smoothly, radiating confidence like a movie protagonist.
No, he struggled.
He experienced severe paralyzing doubt. He admits in the transcript that he actually tried to reverse his
He
decision.
tried to go back.
Yeah. He attempted to go back to the medical path and give it a bash again half-heartedly. But the system simply wouldn't accept it. It didn't work.
The mechanics of human awareness dictate that it never does.
You can't unring the bell.
Once a fundamental paradigm shift occurs within the psyche, you cannot unsee the new reality. You cannot force an expanded awareness back into a constricted container.
I was trying to find an analogy for how that feels, and it's remarkably similar to trying to run a severely outdated operating system on a brand new, highly advanced computer.
Oh, that's perfect.
It's not that the old medical school OS was inherently bad or malicious software. It's simply that you have fundamentally upgraded your internal hardware.
Right.
The old software simply cannot read or process the new complex files your brain is generating. When you try to force the old OS to run, the entire system crashes.
It just glitches out.
Exactly. The logical box of the medical career could no longer interface with his evolved internal state.
And the raw psychological courage required to accept that system crash is immense. We are constantly battling the sunk cost fallacy. Human neurology is wired to believe that because we have invested massive amounts of time, energy, or capital into a specific endeavor-like years of medical training, we are biologically obligated to see it through to the bitter end, even if it destroys us.
Even if we hate it.
Right. And Osman utilized a specific psychological tool at that crucial juncture. He made a binding promise to his future self.
What was the promise?
He established that when he finalized the decision to leave, he was absolutely not going to harbor or entertain regrets later in his life.
He just drew a line in the psychological sand.
And he didn't cross it.
No. And he states that to this day, he hasn't experienced a single regret regarding that choice.
Yeah.
He honored the gnawing feeling, he abandoned the platinum-plated sure thing, and he fiercely protected his internal psychological fulfillment over the external guarantees of society.
It's a huge leap.
But looking at the sheer terror of that decision forces me to ask a mechanical question. How does a human being actually develop the capacity to become comfortable with such drastic, terrifying, gravity-shifting life changes?
It doesn't just happen overnight.
Right. How do you acquire the structural confidence to just light the logical blueprint on fire? This brings us to the operational engine behind Osman's entire philosophy, yoga sciences.
And this is where we must detach from the westernized, commercialized perception of what yoga is.
Yes, please.
He describes yoga in a manner that is vastly, fundamentally different from how it is marketed in modern fitness culture.
Right. He isn't talking about executing perfectly aesthetic stretches in expensive athleisure wear or getting a localized core workout.
Not at all.
He defines yoga as a highly specific, potent, psychological, and spiritual tool that literally functions to fast-forward your evolution as a person.
The mechanics of this claim are profound. He establishes a very comforting baseline reality first.
Which is?
He says if you do not practice these specific yogic tools, you are still going to evolve. Human beings are inherently designed to naturally grow, adapt, and learn from their environments.
We naturally progress.
We do. But he cautions that this natural, unassisted evolution operates on an incredibly slow timeline. You will inevitably learn your required life lessons, but you will learn them slowly, painstakingly over the course of a standard 80-year lifespan.
It takes a lifetime to learn a lifetime's worth of stuff.
Exactly. And he makes sure to note, quite reassuringly, that there is no universal clock pushing you to be in a frantic hurry.
But he introduces the alternative.
The fast track.
Yes. If you do possess the desire to accelerate the process, if you actively adopt and utilize these yogic sciences, he states that everything in your internal and external world changes with violent rapidity.
Violent rapidity.
The acceleration effect is not a minor percentage increase. It is an exponential multiplier. He explicitly claims that by utilizing these methods, by the time a single decade has passed, you will have lived the equivalent life experience and acquired the wisdom of multiple lifetimes.
Let's examine the literal psychological mechanics of how a practice could possibly achieve that.
How does that even work?
How does a person live multiple lifetimes in 10 years? It implies a systematic, accelerated dismantling of the ego.
Okay.
Normally, it takes a human being years of repetitive suffering and external friction to finally recognize a deep flaw in their identity or a toxic behavioral pattern.
Right. It takes Like 3 failed relationships to realize you're the problem.
Exactly. But if advanced yogic sciences force the practitioner into deep, sustained observation of their own internal cognitive processes, they are essentially running stress tests on their identity daily.
Wow.
They are identifying cognitive distortions, processing psychological friction, and iterating their sense of self in weeks instead of decades.
I try to place myself inside the reality of that acceleration, and quite frankly, it sounds terrifying.
It sounds exhausting.
Yes. Imagine forcibly cramming the emotional depth, the intellectual paradigm shifts, and the spiritual ego depths of an 80-year-old into your next 10 years of life.
It's a lot to process.
On a theoretical level, it sounds incredible. You gain vast, expansive wisdom with incredible efficiency. But on a physical and emotional level, it sounds utterly exhausting. You would be in a constant, relentless state of shedding old skins.
And Osman himself states that he has cycled through numerous distinct stages of life, constantly operating under the awareness that he was evolving and mutating very, very rapidly.
This raises an important question, though. It demands an almost superhuman level of psychological flexibility.
It really does.
If you are genuinely living multiple evolutionary lifetimes within a single decade, your foundational opinions, your aesthetic tastes, your core understanding of reality, and your very personality structure are going to shift dramatically and frequently.
You can't hold on to anything too tightly.
You absolutely cannot afford to anchor yourself to fixed, rigid identities. The moment you cling to a specific version of yourself, the accelerated evolutionary current will tear you apart.
Which forces us to confront the most devastating, brutal reality of this entire deep dive.
This part is tough.
It really is. Because if you are engaged in this practice, if you are successfully evolving at warp speed and burning through multiple lifetimes in a decade, what mechanically happens to the people surrounding you?
The collateral damage.
Yes. What is the fate of the people you deeply love who are continuing to evolve at the standard, natural, slow-paced speed?
You generate severe relational collateral damage. And Osman addresses this specific reality with a level of clinical candor that is genuinely jarring.
He doesn't sugarcoat it.
He dives straight into the painful, inevitable reality of romantic relationships operating under these asymmetrical conditions.
It's a hard truth.
I am going to be honest, as a host and just as a person, reading this section of the transcript made my stomach drop. This is incredibly uncomfortable territory.
It challenges a lot of our romantic ideals.
It does. He cites 2 major foundational relationships in his own life. We aren't talking about casual 6-month flings here. One relationship lasted 15 years, and the other spanned 12 years.
Those are significant chunks of a life.
And both of these massive load-bearing relationships ended.
Yeah.
But he is careful to emphasize that they didn't end in sudden, fiery explosions. It wasn't a product of chaotic, impulsive behavior. It was characterized as a slow, agonizing, tectonic drifting, year by agonizing year.
Because of the different speeds of growth.
Exactly. He was utilizing his practices to grow and evolve rapidly, and the other person simply was not growing alongside him.
It is the quiet, devastating tragedy of divergent trajectories.
That's a good way to put it.
When 2 individuals form a bond and start at the exact same point in life, a microscopic 1-degree difference in their evolutionary trajectory doesn't seem mathematically significant at first.
You don't even notice it.
Right. For the first few years, you can still easily reach across the gap and hold hands. But if you draw that asymmetrical line out over the course of 10 or 15 years, the mathematics become undeniable.
The gap gets wider.
Suddenly, the 1-degree shift has compounded, and the gap between the 2 of you is an uncrossable chasm.
I need to sit with the discomfort of this for a second because Osman uses incredibly aggressive, absolute language here.
He really doubles down.
He offers what he literally terms a guarantee, money-back guarantee, neck on the block.
Those are strong words.
Very strong. He states with absolute certainty that if you are deeply following these yogic sciences and rapidly evolving, and you share your life with a partner who is not engaging in that practice alongside you, you will inevitably, unavoidably grow out of that relationship.
He is not presenting this as a hypothetical risk.
No.
He is stating it as an absolute mechanical certainty of human physics. If the rates of psychological and spiritual growth within a partnership are vastly asymmetrical, the foundational structure of the relationship simply cannot bear the differential tension. It will snap.
It's just a matter of time.
Exactly. He explicitly notes that depending on the specific school of thought and the caliber of the teacher, And he confidently asserts that with a teacher of his specific level, a student will evolve at extreme velocities. The student is guaranteed to quickly outgrow a stagnant partner.
I have to channel the audience here because I think a lot of people listening right now are going to feel a visceral, defensive reaction to this concept.
Oh, absolutely. It sounds harsh.
The idea of looking at a partner of 15 years, someone who supported you, loved you, built a life with you, and deciding to walk away simply because you feel you have evolved faster than them. To a lot of people grounded in traditional loyalty, that doesn't sound like spiritual enlightenment.
Right.
That sounds incredibly cold. It sounds deeply selfish.
And that feeling of outrage is a completely valid, natural response when viewed through the lens of traditional societal commitments.
Because we value sticking it out.
We are taught that loyalty means maintaining the bond regardless of internal changes. But we have to examine the specific mechanics of what Osman calls shifting paradigms to understand why this separation isn't born of malice or selfishness, but of functional impossibility.
He relies heavily on that word, paradigms.
Yes, he does.
He argues that every human being operates within a certain paradigm, like a specific framework of reality. But when you are executing this intense level of yoga, you fundamentally shift your paradigm.
And a paradigm is not merely a collection of habits or shared hobbies.
It's deeper than that.
A paradigm is the foundational operating system of your consciousness. It is the literal lens through which your brain decodes reality, processes ethics, and interprets meaning.
Okay.
If you and your partner share a paradigm, even if you disagree on surface-level issues, you understand the world using fundamentally identical geometry. You speak the same root language.
You're on the same page.
Right. But if your accelerated evolution forces you to shift into an entirely alternative paradigm and your partner remains anchored in the old one, the tragedy is that you are suddenly speaking incompatible languages.
The communication just stops working.
The basic capacity for mutual understanding breaks down. The conceptual distance, as Osman notes, simply becomes too vast to bridge.
And he translates that high-level concept into a deeply visceral, emotional metaphor in the transcript.
The caged bird.
Yes, you are evolving, your internal architecture is expanding, you are developing an insatiable appetite for a deeper experience of life. But your partner is entirely incapable of providing that depth, and more importantly, they possess absolutely no desire to expand alongside you.
They're happy where they are.
Exactly. Consequently, you begin to feel physically and psychologically restricted. You feel, using Osman's exact words, caged like a bird.
That's a powerful image.
You possess a biological imperative to fly, to stretch these newly formed evolutionary wings, but the very relationship itself has transmuted into a cage simply because the other person desperately wants the environment to remain exactly as it was when you first met.
And that specific feeling, the sensation of being caged by someone you love, is arguably one of the most dangerous emotional states a human can endure.
Why dangerous?
Because it is the primary breeding ground for profound resentment. If you remain in the cage out of a sense of traditional loyalty, you'll inevitably begin to silently despise the person holding the key.
You'll hate them for holding you back.
You will blame them for the suffocation of your potential. And this is exactly where the sophisticated maturity of Osman's philosophy provides a safety valve. He doesn't advocate for resentment. He emphasizes the absolute necessity of deep mutual respect amidst the separation.
He really doesn't present the end of these relationships as a triumphant victory.
You know it's not a celebration.
He openly acknowledges that it is heartbreaking. He states that he did not possess a desire for these long-term relationships to end initially, but he arrived at a brutal realization regarding the limits of human agency.
Which is that you fundamentally cannot force another human being to meet you halfway.
You just can't.
You cannot forcibly drag someone into your paradigm, and you cannot mandate that they adopt your accelerated pace or your spiritual practices.
And it creates a beautiful, albeit devastating, philosophical symmetry.
Oh, so?
It loops perfectly back to the core premise of following the gnawing heart. Just as you are ethically and biologically bound to honor the gnawing pull of your own heart in order to secure your personal evolution, you are equally non-negotiably bound to respect the sovereign heart of the other person.
Oh, that's brilliant.
If their heart actively dislikes the new trajectory you are on, or if their heart simply desires the peace of remaining exactly as they are, you are required to respect that desire with the same ferocity you protect your own.
You have to let them be.
You must accept their status without judgment, and you must move onward.
The symmetry there is profound. You ruthlessly protect your right to evolve, while simultaneously protecting their absolute right to remain exactly who they wish to be.
Precisely because the alternative is philosophical hypocrisy.
Exactly.
To utilize your evolved state, to force them to change against their intrinsic will, would instantly transform you into the very authoritative figure we criticized in the first section.
You become the parent.
You would cease being an explorer and become the parent attempting to forcibly program the GPS coordinates into someone else's vehicle.
Wow, that brings the entire complex architecture of this theory full circle in a way that is incredibly sobering.
It really does. So what does this all mean? Let's take a massive step back and look at the vast expanse of territory we have covered in this deep dive today.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We initiated this journey by examining the absolute necessity of violently breaking out of the societal logical box. We learn to identify and trust those deep, irrational, unexplainable, gnawing feelings in our chest, recontextualizing them not as anxieties but as literal genetic memories, demanding expression for our survival.
And we navigated the extreme, terrifying caveats of this philosophy too.
Right. Understanding that every genuine risk is a 50-50 existential coin toss for the individual experiencing it, and realizing the absolute necessity of maintaining a functional exit strategy, specifically avoiding the biological traps of addiction.
We dissected the sheer, agonizing courage required to abandon the perceived safety of sunk costs. We looked at the psychology of walking away from a bulletproof, guaranteed path like Osman's medical career solely to protect the integrity of your internal fulfillment against the crushing weight of societal expectation.
And finally, we forced ourselves to confront the incredibly harsh, heartbreaking reality that utilizing tools like yoga to aggressively fast-forward your own personal evolution carries a massive relational cost.
The hardest lesson of all.
We had to accept that accelerating your growth might mathematically guarantee that you will outgrow the people you love most, demanding the supreme emotional maturity to release them with total respect rather than holding them hostage to your new paradigm.
It is a monumental amount of philosophical and psychological data to process.
It is. And as we close, I want to turn the lens directly onto you, the listener. I want you to perform a ruthless, honest audit of the life you are currently constructing.
Ask yourself the hard questions.
Are you actively ignoring a persistent, gnawing feeling in the center of your chest right at this very moment, simply because the action it demands entirely defies logic? Are you willingly remaining inside a perfectly constructed, completely miserable, logically sound box just to maintain the peace with your parents, your professors, or just the general societal consensus?
Those are the foundational questions that determine the trajectory of the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If this framework has resonated with you and you possess the desire to explore the specific granular mechanics of Osman's teachings further, he generates a massive volume of content on his channel.
He's very prolific.
He is. In fact, pulling directly from the source transcript, there's a wonderfully self-aware, pragmatic moment where he addresses his own relentless output.
Oh, the notification bell thing.
Yeah. He actually gives his audience explicit advice regarding YouTube notifications. He admits that he posts so frequently that he wouldn't blame you in the slightest if you decided to turn the notification bell entirely off so his constant updates don't disturb your peace.
That's pretty funny.
It is. But he highly encourages you to actively seek out and filter for the specific topics that serve your immediate evolutionary needs on his channel, The Blind Muslim Yogi.
It is a remarkably healthy approach to modern information consumption. You extract the specific data that serves your current developmental stage, and you leave the rest without guilt.
Definitely. Before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final concept to turn over in your mind.
As you step away from this audio and re-enter the friction of your daily routine, consider the ultimate implication of Osman's theory regarding desire.
The genetic memory aspect.
Yes. We discussed the premise that our deepest unfulfilled gnawing desires might actually function as evolutionary memories, literal biological directives demanding to be expressed for the sake of progressing the human species.
If we accept that premise as reality.
If those deeply suppressed, terrifying urges are actually the mechanical gears by which our entire species is designed to advance, imagine the scale of the bottleneck.
Oh, wow.
What massive, vital component of collective human evolution is being actively, structurally suppressed across the globe right at this exact moment, simply because millions upon millions of people are waking up today and choosing to make the safe, logical choice instead of the brave one.
That perfectly designed blueprint might just be the exact mechanism keeping our entire species trapped in the box. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.